I'm the happens every time. I'm the superintendent of the school district, and I just want to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming to this, our December parent forum, and hopefully we will be able to get all of your questions answered. We'll certainly answer all that we know the answers to. And if we don't know the answers, we will also let you know we don't know the answer. And we will either try to find it out, or we will all just wait patiently together until those answers are shared by whoever is in charge of the answer. So sometimes it's not the school district, sometimes it's our partners at the state. And we are kind of waiting on information at times. So again, I'm Melissa. I'm the superintendent. We are meeting tonight. We have several staff members who are on the call, and they will probably help out answering questions. I'm going to ask Assistant Superintendent Lisa Harlan to introduce herself, and then I will get us started with some kind of housekeeping things.
So welcome. My name is Lisa Harlan, and I serve as the Assistant Superintendent here in Albany. And we have Stacy Lee, who's our curriculum coordinator. I see Tristan Heisley, who's principal at Calapooya Middle School, and Katie Allabach, who works in our early learning programs. And so I'm sure we'll see other staff, and if we do, we'll make sure to introduce them, especially if we kind of defer to them for some of the questions and answers. So Superintendent Goff, if you want to go ahead and get us started with some information.
Thank you so much. So just housekeeping on how our meetings operate in our forums. So what we try to do is share with you the most recent information that we have to get you all up to speed and hopefully answer some questions before you have a chance to ask them. But then we really open it up to questions from you later in the meeting. And how we do that is you just type the question into the chat box, and that allows us to kind of monitor the chat box while people are responding to you, and then to have the right person give you answers. So we will not waste any more time by listening to me speak, and we will just jump right into the fray. Okay, can I get someone to give me the thumbs up? Lisa, can you see my screen?
I sure can.
Excellent. So I wanted to start tonight and just share with you the more recent information that we have from different sources. On Tuesday, Assistant Superintendent Harlan and I met with all of the other superintendents in the state, and Colt Gill, who's the head of public instruction for the Department of Education in Oregon. We have those meetings fairly frequently. And this meeting was designed to give us updates on Ready School Safe Learners and any information regarding changes to the metrics or rules around kids returning to school. So what I want to talk about with you is a couple things. Sorry, I'm going to hop around. So let's start here. So one of the areas that we are looking at as a state is on the Oregon Health Authority website. We have this really nice infographic that you can also look at, and actually we can, if someone can just copy and paste the link, that would be great. Oh, I guess I need to do that. And this website shows us just simply by color coding where schools or where counties are as far as risk within the state. And these counties, if you are in the red, that means that you are in an extreme risk level as a county. And you can see that most counties in the state are within that red extreme risk category. And we'll talk about what each of those categories mean. So 25 counties are in that. Here is Lynn County right here. We're in extreme risk. We had from November 22nd to December 5th, which was the most recent 2-week period for which we have the data, we had 498 confirmed and presumptive COVID-19 cases, which equates to 393.5 cases per 100,000 residents in Lynn County. and an 11.4% test positivity rate, meaning of those who were tested, 11.4% of those people tested had a positive test result. Right next door to us, you can see Benton County, which is also part of Greater Albany Public Schools, and they were bumped from the extreme category over the last 2-week period to the high category for the most recent period. And you can see that their cases per 100,000 were at 201.4 and had a much lower test positivity rate, a 3.2% positivity rate. This is an interactive graphic that you can find on the Oregon Health Authority website. And so you can click in and see more information about the county, which can be very helpful. So I just want to add this to the chat quickly, and I'm having a there we go. Difficult time seeing it. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Superintendent Goff, I'll get on my computer on the
Bless you. Okay.
Grab it.
So I wanted to walk you through the sector guidance chart. So we saw the red, orange, yellow. I don't think we saw any green counties. So green means, oh, we saw 3. So 4. So 4 counties are good to go. They're in the lowest risk category. That means that it's okay for, what that means for us in schools is it means that kids can go to school if they're in the green risk level. For us, because we're in extreme, we're well beyond the rates that we can be in order to hold school. And we fall into now what the governor just changed this, a risk level guidance chart that she has done for the entire state. So every county in the state falls into these categories, and these align with what categories the districts within those counties fall into. So if your county is at red extreme risk, then your district also is at red extreme risk. So we are in that red extreme risk category right now. And what those recommendations are outlined by color coding. So encouraging folks to have a maximum of 6 people in an at-home gathering together. Indoor dining is prohibited and takeout is highly recommended. Outdoor dining is allowed. So some of these things you'll have seen in our community when you saw some of the changes occur. Recreation and fitness, indoor K-12 sports are prohibited right now. And you learned of that, especially if you have a high schooler who's in athletics, you learned of that earlier this week as well. So there are a number of changes that are happening. And now, unlike how things used to be run before, now the counties and the school districts are in alignment, which is helpful for us, I think, in communicating to you and hopefully for you to understand what we're talking about when we are discussing some of these. That is for the Spanish version in a minute. The other thing that Colt Gill talked to us about was the governor is really paying close attention and talking a lot to Oregon Health authorities about the data that's coming in from other governments around the world and then other states who have in-person instruction happening. And the governor is really has a goal to have in-person options available for all students beginning February 1st. So, and again, it says in-person options, so not that all students would be back in school February 1st. The difficulty for us in schools right now is the data charts that I just showed you are the data charts from which we need to work, and those haven't changed yet. So even though the governor's goal is to have students back beginning on February 1st, we haven't seen any changes in the metrics themselves. So we are still reliant upon that, upon the case rate going way down. In our school district, in any school district in the state, right now over the 2-week period, you need to have fewer than 100 cases per 100,000 in order to start kinder through 5th grade students at school. And and remember, we're much higher than that. We're almost 4 times as high as that right now. So we're quite outside that range. For secondary students, for kids in middle and high school, we even have to have fewer numbers. So we have to have 50 or fewer cases per 100,000 over the 2-week period. So that's a pretty big change from where we sit right now. We anticipate upcoming guidance coming from ODE around information such as what will be the testing strategy for the state of Oregon. There are a high number of tests coming in. We do know that the governor is asking the federal government to be able to administer the vaccines to educators, to school professionals, directly following health professionals. So for us, that's a huge deal. Being able to make sure that all of our staff, who are really probably at greatest risk, particularly at the elementary schools, right? Our staff, because of their age range, are at a greater risk than our youngest kids. Being able to keep them safe through the vaccinations is really a promising piece. There are a couple other things that the Department of Education is looking at that I just want you to be aware of. One is adjusting the school calendar and whether or not any days would need to shift with the school calendar. Part of that conversation also is about summer school options. So is there an opportunity to prolong the school year, add days to school years, or have some summer sessions for students that the department would be funding and supporting for school districts? None of that has been decided, but these are things that that they're thinking about at the state level. Skip over that one. Oh, here's the, so going back to the metrics and the color coding, this is what I was talking about with 200 cases. When we're in greater than 200 cases in distance learning, everything pretty much shuts down except for limited in-person instruction. And we still have that happening on school campuses unless we have cases or if the local county health department recommends to us and working with us that we may want to close down completely, limited in person. But at this time, we have as few staff members at our school sites as possible. If people do not need to be on school site because they're currently working with limited in-person cohorts, we have them working from home. This orange column, this is our transition phase where when we consistently get between 100 and 200 cases, then we will start communicating with our families around with greater confidence around the timeline that we'll be able to start our elementary students to school. And we'll talk a bit about what our plans are for elementary right now. And then here we are in the yellow to get elementary back and green for middle school and high school kids. Just a couple more things, then we're going to open it up. So if you have an elementary student, you have seen this graphic likely. This is the timeline that we have been using to share with you decisions that we've been making around when elementary would reopen for hybrid. Right now, where we are in the timeline is in the week of December 7th through December 11th. Did I see December? We had a little typo there. And right now that we're double checking the overall schedule. So if you have an elementary student, you are wondering if your child goes back in hybrid, will they still have their same teacher? That's part of the work that we are solidifying this week. In addition, all of our cleaning crews and staff who need to continue to move additional equipment, desks, et cetera, around are doing those last minute pieces, although that most of that was done much earlier during the pandemic. And then next week by Friday, the assignments of teachers and students will be announced. So your child will find out by next Friday who their teacher will be once they go to in-person hybrid, if they've selected the in-person option. Right now, we have planned for elementary students to come back to school that first week of January. And during that first week, the hope has been that we would be able to start students back at elementary, because our metrics are looking so tough, because our data is looking like our case rate is just far too high. We're finding it to be less and less likely that elementary students will start back that first week of January. That decision will be made next week after the new data is released. And we did get information from our district nurse today, right before this meeting, where she shared what our data looks like for both Lynn County and Benton County so far. So Benton County so far has reported 81 cases this week, and Lynn County has reported 189 cases. And so those numbers are still at such a high level that it looks like we will still remain in the red zone. But we won't find that out until Monday night or Tuesday morning as to whether we are still in the extreme risk. We certainly won't be in the yellow zone based on those metrics, based on the Lynn County metrics. So, but what that means for you and the date is that on Tuesday, we'll make an announcement about, okay, so elementary has been pushed back to the next week if it hasn't, if that's what we need to do. So stay tuned for that. If that happens, your children will still stay with their current teacher after the break. So when they come back from break, they'll still be with their current teacher. And they will have a couple days of warning time when they shift from their current teacher into the in-person hybrid model. So it won't be cold turkey, like your child goes home and then never sees their current teacher again if they end up needing to switch teachers. So just an FYI, we're paying close attention to that as well. Okay, now middle and high school, and then we'll go. Middle and high school is on a similar timeline, just a few weeks later. So the middle and high school staff are working on identifying which staff members are able to work in person right now or need to work in distance learning when they come back. I believe that the middle school survey has gone out to parents, and next week the high school survey will be going out to parents and students. And so if you have kids in both middle and high school, you might be wondering why. That's just because of the pacing of coordinating. The middle school scheduling is just a little bit easier not to crack than the high school schedule. And so we're trying to do things in sequence so that we are sure that we're able to run all of the schedules. So you'll get one more survey if you still have a high schooler coming. So, all right. And I see that we have a lot of questions already in the chat, which is great news. And I think Assistant Superintendent Harlan has probably been answering some of them, but if we can start going through that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to just type in the chat and we'll get moving.
Yep, so we just had some initial questions about conferences and about just parent communication. I know a lot of schools have kind of weekly communication that goes out to parents, but was just offering to check in on some of the email listservs with some parents. So I've taken down those names and I'll go back and kind of double check to make sure that you're on the list to make sure you're getting those emails. And then about conferences, we didn't have formally scheduled conferences this year just because of the nature of learning in general and the virtualness of it, and not wanting to kind of take away any student contact days. And we know that there was some disruptions earlier on. So teachers have been really kind of individually reaching out to parents regarding their students' progress. So if there are folks who have either concerns or questions, I really encourage you to either reach out to your child's teachers or their principals. And I think in going through the chat, I think I got through most of it. And then we have a question that was just added by Aaron. So I'll go ahead and read the questions just because I know we have some folks joining us on by phone so that they know what the question is. So Aaron asks, assuming things do not improve, when will the district decide to call off in-person school this year? Yeah, that is a great question. And I will defer to Superintendent Goff, but I don't see us at some point saying we will give it up for the year and not try to get kids in if there's an opportunity to. Superintendent Goff?
Yeah, that's correct. So our hope is to get our students back. We want to get them back as quickly as possible. As soon as kids and staff can be safe and healthy, we want our kids back in school. And so unless we are told by the state that we are unable to open, or if something dramatic happens within Lynn or Benton counties that would lead our school board to make a decision, I don't think that I don't foresee us making a call that would say no more school until the fall.
And then Christy asks, who are the surveys coming from for middle school and high school? I don't remember seeing one for my middle schooler as of yet.
That's a great question. And Tristan, I'm wondering if you know the answer to that one.
Yeah, so the district sent it out yesterday, and each of the middle schools was going to send it out to parents by the end of this week. So I know Calapooya sent it out this morning at like 8:30 in the morning, but every middle school had a different plan for when they were rolling it out. It's going to be by the end of this week, though.
Okay,
And
so it sounds like you'll get that link from both the district and your school just to make sure that you get it. And if you don't by the end of the week, I would contact your principal. But I feel pretty confident that you could go back to the one from the district earlier as well. So just a parent said, we don't get weekly communication at South Shore. I get gaps, but that's it. So I just wrote that down to double check. Derek says, and I think it actually might be Courtney, says, I love Dojo in second grade. Shout outs to Mrs. Holloway, Gil Turner, and Barnhart are good at communicating. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, and we'll pass those on. And then our GAPS communications director just put a link in the chat for the middle school selection information. So you can actually just click on that link and it will take you to the survey. So anybody in here that has a middle schooler who hasn't taken it, you can just grab that and do that now as well. And I think we're up to date on the, oh, here come more.
awesome.
Becca just says, I apologize if it was covered. I came in a bit late. Don't apologize, Becca. Super glad you're here. Are there any anticipated changes to the schedules of online only K-5 kids when the hybrid program opens up? Great question. So I want to make sure that we're really clear. I'm not talking about Albany online. So if your children are going to Albany online, which is kind of a different curriculum, kind of its own contained online school, this does not apply to Albany online. But for all of us, we've been doing distance learning kind of virtually. And when we start back up, hopefully sooner than later in hybrid, the schedules of the K-5 kids who still want to do kind of virtual only will change because it will stay consistent with their own school. So let's say, I'm going to just make this up. I go to Oak Elementary, and when in-person is able to start, my parents decide that based on our risk factors, I'm going to still do virtual. My schedule will change because it will line up with the Bell schedule at Oak for the kids who are going in person. The reason that will change, one is when we start to go in person, we have to bus kiddos. And so the start and end times actually will change for students in elementary, and you'll experience what we had before, which is some schools may start at 7:45 and other schools may not start until 8:45. And really that's a transportation issue. But we'll have the Bell schedule still aligned so that your children can still have their same teacher that they have now. And so that's a great question. And yes, when we go back to in hybrid, even if your child is staying virtual, that schedule in terms of start and end times may change. You'll see also a link in the chat for the Oregon Health Authority information again. And then another question, has there been any discussion on how we can still volunteer in classrooms, in virtual classrooms? We've had several parents ask, and that is from Kate at Oak. So I think that is and would be could be a great discussion to have kind of with your principal. It's a little trickier in virtual classrooms, although certainly having kind of breakout rooms where you have adults who are helping or hosting kind of help rooms for students who either need more help or kind of interest-based rooms is certainly a possibility. We know that when we go back to in-person, volunteers in the classrooms this year will likely not happen, but virtually absolutely still could. So that's a great question. And I would refer you back to your principal to figure out the logistics of how we might get folks who are interested to sign up and support either different teachers at different grade levels. And question, will children have to be vaccinated to attend school in person? And the parent says, I'm not sure I agree with that. You know, that is a great question. And to be completely honest, I don't know that any of us know that answer right now. But what I do know is we don't anticipate that vaccinations or vaccines for children will actually even be available this year. They don't anticipate that vaccines will be developed and available for children under 16 until this summer and perhaps even the fall. And so I just don't have enough information to intelligently answer that question. I don't know. Right now, one of the things that we are looking at, and I know have been discussions, are around vaccines for adults and what the availability would even be for adults who do want the vaccine, who are working as educators in the system, when those might be available. And I don't anticipate that those would be available to educators even, probably not until February, maybe March.
Okay, I've got your next question. Will kids be able to stay with their teachers if they stay with distance learning for the year? My kids are really scared of getting sick and don't want to force them back to in-person learning.
So I would say, in working with the elementary director, Sue Luthra, who is amazing, and the principals, most of the kids will be able to stay in distance learning with their teacher that they currently have. That's not true in every case, but by and large, most kids will stay with the teacher that they've had. There are some instances where we have staff that have medical conditions that will require that they work virtually. And in those instances, that's what they'll do. And they may work with another teacher to kind of split the work between in-person and virtual. So it's possible that your child will have a different teacher in distance learning for this year. But by and large, we were able to keep most kids with their teachers at their home school. And you'll find out that information next week specific to your students.
HD writes, mental health needs to be a top priority. Our social hours keep getting canceled. I'm sorry to hear that. Staff should have subs, whether the scheduled activity is academic or social. Can this please get addressed? The kids need a stable schedule and know what to expect each week. It's already not enough social time. It's only 1 hour, one time a week. So when it gets canceled, it's a very long time between communicating with friends. Yeah, that certainly can be really rough. And we certainly agree that the predictability of a schedule is really helpful to our students right now. So I'm not sure what school you're at, HD, but certainly if you haven't been in touch with the principal yet to let them know, I think that would be a great place to start. And then we will also work from our end to check in on things.
Yep, it's hard. I think a lot of the social hours are staffed by our EAs.
EA stands for education assistants.
Sorry, and subs sometimes, yeah, are hard to come by. Okay, I'll do the next one and we'll just go back and forth, Melissa. How about that? Okay.
Sounds good.
Child goes back to the building but has a different teacher. Can I change her back to virtual to have the same teacher? Okay, so let me be clear. I'm so sorry. If your children goes back to the building, they will likely have the same teacher they have now. Most of them will. But yes, if you decided I would rather have her virtual to stay with the same one, you could. Most likely it will be the students who stay in virtual that may have a different teacher. And so it is more likely that the reverse would happen.
And the reason for that is we are seeing much higher numbers of parents who have said that their children would be returning in person in hybrid. Parent, I've been overall happy with the virtual teaching. It's going pretty well, so thank you. The biggest problem is there's almost no time for the younger kids to talk to each other. And I know my kiddo has a lot of pent up energy and emotions because no recess or social interaction. Thank you for that feedback. And we know that that is a real challenge. Part of what's happening in many of our elementary schools now is that education assistants have organized to offer some social times, like we were talking about with HD in his earlier comments. Sorry, I have this new kitten and she won't let me put her down. We don't have that across the school district yet, but what I can tell you is that our principals have been in conversation about what does it need to look like for their own individual school site? What do teachers need and education assistants think could work for students at their own individual school site? So those social times look different depending on which school you're at. And my hope would be that you would find more opportunities where you're going to get to see your child interact more, especially after the first of the year. So this one's for you, Lisa. This may have been asked, sorry, will the schedule change to the half-day model if we don't return to school in hybrid so that the transition is already done for whenever our numbers drop?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I think, so check me here, Melissa. I think what it's asking is, will our schedule change like after the first of the year, even if we don't go back, so that it matches the hybrid schedule?
I'm wondering if it's a question that's based on level. Ashley, could you just give us a little more information?
I think it's elementary. And I think the question is, okay, the numbers are not dropping. Let's say we have more cases. Are we still going to change our schedule so that we're ready when it does?
Right. That's a great question. So the schedule is not going to change for kids until we make that transition time into the hybrid in person. So students will still stay with their same teachers. Teachers will still be on the same schedule until the time comes that we make that switch. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, there will be plenty of forewarning for teachers and for students before that change is made so that you can get used to the different schedule.
And Ashley went in the chat and said, yes, sorry. So thank you for giving me some feedback to know if I was understanding that it was an elementary question and if I got that right. So Principal Heisley, I think you have something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to address that from the middle school side of things. We are going to make some changes to schedules so it reflects what they'll be in hybrid. Usually at the beginning of each semester in the secondary level, students get a new schedule anyway. And so the schedule that a student gets at the end of January will reflect the classes that they'll have when they move into hybrid. It'll be the same schedule we have right now virtually, but when we go to hybrid, they'll just move right into hybrid and have those same teachers that they have on their schedule. That's why we're trying to kind of get ahead of this right now.
And while we have you, Principal Heisley, a question that came in for 6th graders and then 9th graders, they added too. Will 6th graders do an orientation before the switch? And I'm assuming that means before the switch to hybrid when they go in person, yeah.
Right, yeah, our plan right now is to have 6th graders on campus for a day or two before we bring the rest of the students in, just to get them comfortable with the process and the building and all of that.
And then I'm just going to bring us back up. Patty says, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought you said if we go back hybrid and those that remain virtual will have their same teacher. I'm not sure that will be true in every case. So no, Patty, what we said is that in most cases, students who go to school in person in the hybrid model will most likely retain their current teacher.
But Patty, you're correct. It's not true in every case. That's true.
Yeah.
And then Jennifer Buck said, yes, I work at Tangent. We do a social time each Wednesday. It's totally optional, but we're having fun. And she also said, Jennifer said they did paper snowflake making and Lego blocks and other games. Super fun. That's where I need to be.
I haven't been to the Tangent one. I need to go.
No. Aaron says, can you tell us the statistics regarding how many families chose in-person versus online learning for January? So I will tell you that it's about 70% chose hybrid, about 25% chose the virtual, and about 5% chose Albany online. The Albany online folks largely had stayed, are already attending Albany online. It was about 4 or 5% and preferred to stay with that. So it's about 70, 25, 5 in terms of who would be willing to go in person and who wanted to go virtually.
And then we didn't answer the question about orientation for 9th grade. And do you know that, Lisa? I don't know the answer to that.
I know that principals are having that conversation around what that looks like. Part of the give and take for all of this, for elementary too, I think about kinder and first graders who have either not been on campus or not in a long time and not for a while. Same with 6th graders and 9th graders. The cohorts, when they go into hybrid, will be so small because they won't be able to interact in those large groups like they have been before, that there may not be the need. At elementary, when you have a class that's going to be, 13 or 14, you may not have the need to do that in 6th and 9th graders, but I know principals are discussing that now to see, what that will look like. I know that they also, on the flip side of that, is not wanting to keep any of the other kids out one more day of having some in-person interaction than they need to. So trying to balance all of that, I know are conversations they're having right now. And then I'm going to read this question and throw it over to you, Melissa. Is the governor thinking about changing metrics to move forward towards a February 1st goal? And then how will we be in person if we're so far away now?
Right. Yes, exactly. So I don't know if the governor is thinking of changing the metrics for the February 1st goal. And if not, I also wonder how will we be in person if we are so far away now. So one of the things that could change is we could find that we are able to get control over the virus spread, and we could see through our behavioral changes and actions that we take a really big change that would help us meet that timeline. But if we don't see that, I'm not sure how we, I don't know. So all I know is that she has shared February 1st as that goal for options. And I learned that on Tuesday. So that's the amount of information that I have so far. And there could be a potential, she could be thinking that February 1st is the goal for the phase in to begin. So even starting with elementary out at in February rather than in January. So we are still waiting to learn more information and see if she shares anything more with us. Someone did ask, if you pick virtual for the rest of the year, can you switch your minds after January? The difficulty is with the cohort model. So as we are looking at the kids who are coming onto campus, we can only have so many students with a teacher at a given time, and we can't go even a single student above that. And so once we figure out the puzzle of getting the 70% of elementary students who want to come back onto campus with their teachers in their cohorts, we would only have a very small amount of wiggle room for students to add in. And those will likely be students who actually move into gaps rather than students who are already settled and have an assigned teacher. So I would encourage you to not assume that you can switch after January, because it would be very difficult for us to make those accommodations. And I am not confident we'd be able to make those accommodations for you. I have 5 kids from college to elementary that will finish this year online instead of in person to help ease stress and fear. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Derek.
Can we slow clap for the person that has 5 kids, period? And then from college to elementary, like I'm exhausted with 2. So hang in there, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I have a college-age daughter. She's a sophomore in college right now, and she's home with us right now. And certainly, there is a fear that she has as she sees her own community, her college community, see numbers really climb. She's not sure about returning onto campus. So I understand that very well. How big will middle school classes be? Mr. Heisley.
He appears right on time.
Yeah, it's amazing. Um, we're shooting for about 15 kids per class right now. That's really about all we can hold with the social distancing that we need to do. So in each classroom.
Because the classrooms are only so big and we need to have 35 square feet per human in each classroom. And because we need to be able to have 6 feet in between in between where kids are seated, it pretty much limits us to 16 or fewer kids per classroom. And there are some classrooms that are much larger or much smaller, and we have to adjust based on the smaller classrooms. I wouldn't say we're expanding out on larger classrooms, but what I would emphasize is that if the classrooms are smaller, we aren't having 16 kids in there because we can't.
Right. And so you might have a class that's smaller because of the space or larger because of the space, but each school and each classroom is a little bit of its own puzzle. So Tabitha asked, so will virtual teachers be changing or staying? So that's where it gets kind of tricky, right? So we'll have some teachers who might have one class of in-person in the morning, and then their afternoon class will be virtual, or kind of vice versa. So depending on how many students or parents chose virtual or in-person in a given school at a given grade, you might have, so for example, it's pretty typical for in second grade, for example, for there to be 2 teachers. You might have one teacher who's teaching an AM class and a PM class in person, and one teacher who's teaching just an AM class and a PM class virtual. So every school, depending on that specific grade and how many people have chosen virtual or hybrid, it gets a little, right, tricky figuring that out. But we will have a lot of staff who teach both, who will teach one section of in-person and one section of virtual.
Someone writes, I appreciate all the staff with working to teach all the kids through this with patience and kindness. Thank you. And we appreciate the patience and kindness that folks are showing our staff as well. Our staff have been working so incredibly hard, and I would say this for everyone in education right now, but I can attest to it here in GAPS, and are so concerned with making sure that the kids know that they are loved and they are missed, and we want them to be safe and healthy, and we want them to know that that we care for them. So hopefully your child is feeling that way. Melanie asks, will the virtual teachers be from the same school if there is a switch in teachers, for example, a familiar face? It sounds like yes.
In most all instances, that is true. The answer is yes. And in most instances, it'll be their same teacher. And if it's not, it might be like the other second grade teacher or the other third grade teacher or whatnot.
Yeah. So we're at 7:15. We have about 10 more minutes, and then we'll start transitioning into our next parent forum, which you can also stay for. But if you don't speak Spanish as your first language, it won't be, it may be a little confusing to you because our next forum will be in Spanish. However, interpreters that rock this world participate in that meeting, which allows me to fully participate because I only speak English. I can understand a little bit of Spanish, but I am an English speaker. So you will start to see some parents and some of our staff members, our Spanish speaking staff, our interpreters and translators coming on the call now over the next few minutes as well.
So I think it's from Kate, says, when we are allowed to do in person, can we also bring back some of our weekend clubs activities that we did before COVID? So that will all depend on what type of activity, how many people, indoor, outdoor, and kind of where we are as a county. So for instance, the number of people who can gather, that you can still social distance, and kind of those things I think will dictate those activities. We will certainly want to do as many things as we can that kind of just involve and include parents and families and kids. And I anticipate that even when we come back into hybrid, there will still be the 35 square foot per person, or the 6 feet of space that will still be limited in the number of people we can gather, especially indoors in the same space. And then Danielle writes, teachers have been doing a great job. My son, who is an excellent student, said to me that he hates school right now. It breaks my heart, and it's not a reflection of the hard work from the district or teachers. He just misses the social aspect. This is hard on everyone. Thank you for what you are doing. I agree and concur as a parent and as somebody who works in the school district. It is hard all the way around.
It really is so hard. And we have, in addition to kind of the social groups that we've started, we also have some opportunities for students to receive some mental health supports through Conversations with Lynn County Mental Health, who has been a really good partner to us for telehealth. What you're describing, Danielle, is unfortunately, however, I think much more common than any of us want or could have imagined. And I think, 9 months ago when this all started, had we known we would be in it for 9 months, I think we all would have said, our kids can't do that. And our kids are really trying really hard themselves, and they need love and support, and as much kind of props as we can give to them, propping them up, because this is just a really hard thing to navigate. And we know that because it's hard on us. I mean, it's hard on all of us, and we're adults. So them not being able to see each other and spend time together, we know that that's really difficult. And so going back to the weekend clubs and activities question, part of that, kids will get fed on that somewhat from just having some in-person time together again, which will be fantastic. And for those kids who are in remote learning during that time, it will also be important to have some of those opportunities for kids to still see other students, even if they aren't at school in the in-person hybrid model. So we'll be looking at those opportunities. And in the chat, we can see other parents replying to Danielle's post. Yes, Danielle, same here. Another parent writes, I understand my 3 younger ones feel the same. Best wishes to everyone. Tabitha writes, Oak Elementary teachers and staff have been amazing. Susie asks, can the school push back with the metrics to the governor? Is the district able to state the hardship of our student population? That's a great question, Susie. And what I would say is, where I believe that the governor's desire is to have our kids back in school as soon as it is safe. And she has, I have not seen any indication from her or from Colt Gill, who's the head of the Department of Education, who has any desire to have kids out of school for 1 minute longer than they need to be. There is a huge drive for that. And yet we are still in this pandemic where people's health is at risk, and the constant weighing of the social, emotional, and mental health needs, and the very real physical fatality risks that are associated with the pandemic are definitely in conversations, I would say, all the time by those of us across the district, so across Greater Albany Public Schools, but then also across the state, all the way up to the governor's office. I think that it is the fact that she has adapted the metrics levels based on science and the data that has come out from other countries, that she's already made that one adjustment, which was a really significant adjustment, shows that how much she wants kids back in school, and that she's looking at the scientific data to make those decisions. And so the other thing I would say is I also don't want to bring our kids back and our staff back in an unsafe situation. And I am going to, rather than press the governor in an area where my expertise is not, which I am not a scientist, I'm going to trust the scientists in epidemiology who are working at the state level and advising the governor. And I will continue to see what are all of the things that we can do here at the local level to support our students in a situation which is so frustrating and exhausting for everybody who's in it. And we're all in it, whether we're local or whether we're across the country.
The other thing I would say is, so the government increased the metrics that were for K-12 education by between 3 and 5 times, increased them. And we still, so they were down here, and by 3 to 5 times said, okay, you can have this many, and we are still quadruple that in Lynn County. So if you would have told me any of those things could have been true, right? I think I just don't even wrap my mind around it sometimes when I really think about we are not close, like we are well over metrics that have been increased. And so, and the question of the hour always is like, what's the crystal ball? What is it going to look like in the future? And my imagination is just not active enough to keep up with the reality of this year. So my hope is that this year goes out, goes down quietly and we have a new start next year. But I would just want everyone to know how much we want kids in schools for everybody, right? For everyone's sake.
So Danielle writes, we are on the watch for depression symptoms and doing mindfulness at home as much as possible. I think that's fantastic. Thank you. The teachers are doing excellent and the students are learning. That's great. Sharon writes, same here. And this is, I think, to an earlier comment. My second grader refuses to even go to school most days. He hates online school. And I'm so sorry, Sharon, that that's his experience. And if that is his experience and you haven't been in close conversation with his teacher, please make sure that you do that. His teacher, his principal, they are there to try and help him enjoy school. Pinterest has become a huge application to use to help with activities and information. I completely agree. A lot of teachers give free ideas there and advice as well. That is really true. And I would also say, if you, someone Danielle mentioned earlier, mindfulness strategies are really readily available if you just Google the term mindfulness. So those are self-calming, self-centering strategies that students and adults can use in order to help them manage emotions. And I highly recommend tons of videos online that you can watch that are appropriate for children. Tabitha says, also Calapooya Middle School 7th and 8th grade teachers have been amazing too. They go above and beyond for their students. Thank you. And then we hear these forums and the PBIS forums have been extremely helpful, and I appreciate the communication. And someone else agreed with that. So thank you. I appreciate that. And on that note, it seems like we have kind of run through the questions tonight. So I appreciate you. You did kind of make it easy for us. We just shared the mental health resources in the chat that we do have available for you. There are videos on there that you can watch with your children that are mindfulness videos that help them similar to what I was talking about earlier. So we have actually published those on our webpage, and I would really highly recommend that you take a look at those. And thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thanks for taking such good care of your kids. And thank you for just loving our staff and appreciating the work that they are doing. I'm really proud to work here, really proud to be a part of this team. And may you all have a really happy holiday season. And please wear your masks and keep your circle small and stay healthy. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Patty. I'm really proud of that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
You're going to take a 5-minute